This is okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to Parent Conversations. This is the second of an 8-week series, right, Michelle? Digital wellness, and I had the title pulled up right here. Today's segment is called Improving Brain Health in Small and Simple Ways. So Michelle Linford with Epic Digital is with us today. She's our guest speaker, and I'm going to turn the time right over to her. Right before I do, if you have any questions, go ahead. You can raise your hand, unmute yourself, and interject in a pause in the conversation, or type something in the chat message, and I'll check on that periodically. And we'll get our questions answered. So Michelle, it's all you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to pull up our slides for the day. And just as a warning, this is a jam-packed session, and that's intentional. When we talk about mental wellness, we're talking about trying to reduce mental clutter and to slow things down. Today, I'm going to sort of violate that, just in the spirit of being able to give you as much information as possible. But because the slides will be available afterwards, you don't need to worry about frantically taking notes or taking screenshots or anything. You'll be able to review all of this content later. So I hope that you can just sit back and have paper and pencil handy, but more for things that stand out to you rather than trying to capture everything in the fire hydrant today. We'll start with a brief grounding and review, where we've been and what we'll be talking about today. A brief check-in, and then we'll jump right into the content. We'll cover building basic brain awareness with some brains-on examples. We'll talk about understanding the interrelationships between inputs, our internal weather and processes, and our behaviors. We'll give you a chance to review the questions in the mental health section of the Digital Wellness Institute's survey. And we hope that if you haven't taken that survey, that you'll take the opportunity to do that. That will actually be one of your invitations. And then we'll cover some mental wellness practices that you can consider. We're just touching the surface here. There are a lot of other tips and tricks that we could give, but we hope that what we share today can be helpful. And as always, we invite you to have something to write with, because we do some reflection activities. The survey, Catherine's asking about where we can find the survey. The survey link is in these slides. It's in last week's slides as well. And I believe that Megan has sent out the link also. So there are many places you can get it, and we can put it out in the report too, along with the slides. So, okay, let's start with the grounding. We start with this quote, always from Viktor Frankl: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And in our view, digital wellness is about creating space and expanding the space that we have, and becoming more aware of what's going on in that space between stimulus and response. Last week, we talked about the water we swim in, all of these, external stimuli that are, our world is definitely more stimulus filled with digital technology. And through the course of this series, we will continue to talk about changing the water we swim in from the inside out. So last week we talked about starting with our values and defining our values, and starting with that center of our why. What is it that gets us up every day and keeps us motivated about life? Who do we want to be? How do we want to show up in the world? And what matters most? staying grounded in those values is one of the most important ways that we can stay grounded in the digital world. Becoming aware of our internal and external environments and trying to reduce clutter here. And then we'll talk in weeks to come about tips and tricks for reducing physical and digital and even social clutter. So last week we covered start with your center. This week is mental wellness. And then we'll follow mental wellness is the first topic in the Digital Wellness Institute survey. Physical wellness is the second one, and we'll follow the 6 topics in the survey. And then we have a bonus topic called around media literacy. And you'll see that we actually fold that in through the series. When we do digital wellness, as parents especially, we've talked about this, and I'll probably mention this every week, but our tendency is often to focus on our children and on the technology itself. Well, we need to manage the technology. We need filters. We need limits. And all of these things are important. But our hope is that you can first learn and practice yourself, in a sense, putting on your own oxygen mask, so that you can then share and learn side by side with your kids and with your loved ones. That's one of EPIC's values, is continuously learning side by side. And as we work on learning and practicing, when we make changes, research shows that we can impact people 3 degrees out, even if we don't know those people. So the work that you do as an individual in learning and practicing and then sharing can have an impact in many ways in your family and beyond. As we mentioned, today we'll talk about mental wellness. And you can see on our model, I've circled to keep the center and values in mind. And you can see that we have this ring of media literacy. We started with core media, and there's a ring of media literacy as we go into these different topics. So today you'll have, I changed that practicing like twice. I don't know why it's still misspelled. I apologize for that. Today you get to practice some basic media literacy. So first of all, this is an overview of the topic. We're not in 45 minutes. We can't do a deep dive. And so remember, try to engage it as such. And don't, like I said before, you don't need to worry about taking screenshots or anything like that, because the slides will be available and that will be edited again. We invite you to be as present with the content in the moment as you can be, and know how the content makes you feel. So media literacy is often, people often talk about media literacy in terms of the content itself, but so much of media literacy is about self-awareness and essentially emotional literacy, or how the media impacts you, because again, between stimulus and response is that space. So pay attention to what resonates with you, what feels like, maybe I'm going to set that one down for now. And then as we get to the end of the presentation of our discussion, choose actions that feel resonant and doable. You get to drive your own bus. We're just here to share some ideas. All right, so we're going to start with a check-in. Every week we'll do a brief check-in like this. And the reason is because, so I'll have you write down 3 words that describe how you are feeling at the moment, mentally, physically, emotionally, anything that comes to mind or that you notice. Because awareness, mindfulness, these kinds of words, these kinds of concepts are so central to digital wellness. One of the risks of using digital tools is that we can kind of lose touch with where we are. We can lose touch with time. We can lose touch with our own emotions, our own physical state. And so practicing, plugging in and checking in with how you're feeling is an important part of digital wellness, not just mental wellness, but wellness all around. So if you just want to take a few, we'll just take maybe 30 seconds to give you to think about and write 3 words that describe how you're feeling at this moment. If we had more time, we would go around the Zoom and let everybody share verbally, but for the sake of time, we just let that be a reflection activity. The second part of the check-in is to follow up from last week. We gave the invitation to pick from a list or choose 3 values that matter to you, 3 words that describe attributes or characteristics that you are either working on or want to work on, to describe who you are, who you want to be, how you want to show up in the world. And the invitation was to take 10 minutes to write about one of those characteristics. So we wanted to follow up and see if anyone had the chance to do this. If 1 or 2 people would briefly like to describe how it went.
I can share about my experience.
Thank you, Emily.
So I had the 3 traits I wrote down, and I chose joyful to write about. And I chose joyful because joy seems to be a little bit less conditional than happiness. So I wrote down for about 10 minutes, and it was really cool to dig deep and to realize what that word really meant to me, and I also noticed how it was connected to so many other traits, like maybe gratitude could play into joyfulness, stuff like that. But it was really good because I ended my summary, my writing, with a few questions to think about, how would I respond with this? How will I approach hardship, or how will I allow a hiccup in my routine ruin the rest of my day? Stuff like that. So I think it's something I'll continually be able to reflect on.
Thank you for sharing your experience. Is there anyone else? Maybe one more person? Okay, we'll just carry on then. If you haven't had a chance to do this, we highly encourage it. You can read through last week's slides to see the significant impact that research shows that a simple writing experience of 10 minutes can have on a life. And we encourage you to do this with your families as well. All right, second section, building basic brain awareness. See if you can say that 10 times fast. It's kind of a tongue twister. All right, my son, when you see my screen, do you see, do I need to pull that out of the way so you can see the full screen?
We can see the full screen for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. My son is, as far as we know, the youngest professional musician in the state. And for time's sake, I won't show you this clip from Channel 11 News, but I included the links to these 2 performances as a possible activity you can do with your family. This learn, practice, share little icon I've put on slides that you could come back and revisit as possible activities to do with your family. So why does magic work? Have you ever attended a magic show, or had a magician work with you one-on-one and experienced that?
The magic works because they basically get you to put your attention elsewhere and not on what they're doing.
That's exactly right. One of the reasons that my son loves doing magic is because he loves understanding human nature and how our brains work. He's a lot like his mom in that way. A lot of illusions, indeed, Emily. He is able to, it's like, I'm a believer. I'm a believer in magic, but all it is just keeping our focus somewhere else. And it teaches us something about how our brains work. The brain is a stage. It can only hold so many things in the present moment. All right, so is there anyone here who likes math? I have a math problem to do. A volunteer? All right, well, you can each pull out your paper. I'm going to challenge you to do this without your phones, without your technology, just to do some old-fashioned math. Some reports say that it can take from 70 seconds to 23 minutes for the brain to reset when switching tasks. Okay, so we're going to look at it at a minimum and a maximum limit here. In some observations, adult professionals have been observed to switch tasks over 24 times in an hour. So let's assume these, I've been looking up some of the original research and the numbers vary. And so we're just going to use this as an exercise. Assuming these numbers are accurate, what's the minimum and maximum time that can be lost when you switch tasks? You can just yell it out when you have the numbers.
Michelle,
Yeah,
are you saying we're supposed to calculate if our brain changed tasks 24 times in an hour, what the minimum amount of time lost would be?
yes. So for every minute every time you task switch, you can lose anywhere from 70 seconds to 23 minutes. We'll just say 60 seconds. We'll say 1 to 23 minutes to make the math simpler. This is
I don't
another
mind
activity.
math if I know how to solve the problem, but I have no idea how to begin to solve this one. So I'm just going to sit it out.
Well, it's gonna, oh, go ahead. Oh, you're sitting it out? The lower end is gonna be 24 minutes
Right?
to, what was the top one? 23 times 24 is going to be, I don't have my phone with me.
I'm doing it slowly here. Well, I got 552 minutes.
Yeah,
So
Change
Yeah.
that to hours.
it is, in fact, there are some people who when they task switch, they never return to the original task. So our brains are very susceptible to this thing called task switching. All right, we have another activity. I need 2 volunteers, one to be a timer and one to be the guinea pig.
I can be the timer.
Who said that?
This is Emily. Or, I mean, I
Oh.
could be either.
I'll do one. I don't care. This is Linda.
Okay. Emily, we'll have you time. Linda will have you be our guinea pig. So there are three different sections to this. The first one, Linda, will be that you'll just count to 20. And Emily, if you can stopwatch her to see how long that takes. Okay. And then the second challenge is to just read these words. And we'll have Emily time you on that. And then after you do that, I'll talk about the third one.
So I'm ready. I'm going to just start counting, right?
Yep. Tell Emily, if you could just say go when you're ready to start timing.
Okay, you may begin.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Cat, apple, ball, tree, square.
We want to do one at a time. Sorry if I didn't make that clear.
So her
how long?
counting took 7 seconds.
Okay, so now let's see how long it takes to read the words.
Are you going to tell me go?
You may begin.
cat, apple, ball, tree, square, head, house, door, box, car, king, hammer, milk, fish, book, tape, flower, arrow, key, shoe.
That was about 6.5 seconds.
Oh, she even did it faster. Look at that. Way to go. All right, Linda. So the third challenge is there are 20 words here. So you're going to match the words to the number. So cat 1, apple 2, ball 3. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And just do that as quickly as you can.
All right. Tell me when to start.
I think it would be easier if you told me when to start, because I have to switch between tabs on my phone.
All right. Ready, set, go. Cat 1, apple 2, ball 3, tree 4, square 5, head 6, house 7, door 8, box 9, car 10, king 11, hammer 12, milk 13, fish 14, book 15, tape 16, flower 17, arrow 18, key 19, shoe 20.
Okay, that was about 22 seconds.
Well done, friend. So what did we learn here? What did we observe?
When you're trying to multitask, it sure takes a lot longer. She was able to
Yeah.
shout off 1 to 20 in 7 seconds and read the list in just under that. And it was more than 3 times as long to do both.
How did that feel, Linda, to try to do that
Well,
last one
it
in
was
comparison?
It was hard for me, and I had to use my fingers.
Right, you're starting to use some tricks for your brain, right?
My fingers to help me keep track which number I was on, so that when I went to the word, I didn't forget.
That was a
Which
smart
I was on.
that was a smart workaround, actually.
I
So you did it.
probably would have been slower if I hadn't used my fingers.
Yeah, you did it pretty fast. So
Yeah, she was being very methodical. I could hear the methodic. So
and
now
you
I know
know,
why.
working with our brains, we find tricks, but we can only do so much with cognitive load before, it really starts to, you were accurate too, but it could be easy to make a mistake. The more we add cognitively, the slower our brains work and the more mistakes we make. So these are just, again, some basic examples, and we hope activities that could be fun to take home, because this is all about bringing digital wellness home. All right, so moving into the next section, we want to talk about interrelationships for a minute, but going back to the Viktor Frankl quote. Inputs, we have inputs or stimuli. We have our internal processes, what happens in that space, and that can be impacted by our internal weather. We talked a little bit about that last week. And then the output is the behavior. So it's like what's going on inside of us is the formula. If you've ever, I'm an algebra lover, so you add the variables in, put them in the formula, and you get the results out. So we're going to talk a little bit about I'm just going to show different potential ways to think about this. This is a linear drawing here, but they're really more interrelated. So sometimes our behaviors can impact how we feel, and how we feel can impact our behaviors. And inputs can impact our weather, and our weather can impact internal weather and processes, can impact how we perceive or engage with input. So they're all interrelated. It's not necessarily a linear process. So different brains visualize things in different ways. So I used a few different images, but here's an example. There's a man named Neri Eyal who talks about the impact of internal triggers on digital use. So he'll often speak to big groups and say, okay, when you're feeling lonely, what tool do you go to? And there are often some patterns and trends. So this is just a reflection activity, but you could use this little worksheet with your family. Again, another take-home activity. But when you're feeling inadequate, lonely, sad, angry, fearful, uncertain, stressed, overwhelmed, fill in the blank, do you have a tool that you tend to go to more often than not if you're a digital tool user? Or if not, do you have kind of a go-to behavior? Some people may turn to cooking or eating, or, you know, we all have different ways that we cope with our internal weather. And sometimes that involves tools, digital tools. Like when I'm bored or feeling overwhelmed, I'll often go to Facebook. Does anyone want to throw out an example of where and how they see connections between their internal weather and their behaviors, whether digital or otherwise?
I like to go to like the bargains websites or scroll for deals, and then I end up buying things.
So yeah, like shopping can definitely be a coping mechanism. Thank you for sharing that.
I've got one. When I'm angry or stressed, especially if the weather's decent, I just go for a walk. I just walk really fast.
So good, positive coping mechanisms. Spoiler alerts. The flip side can also be true, that what we hear or experience, oh, we've got somebody, stress planning. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So there are positive and negative ways to cope, right? When you hear or read about or learn about or experience, either again online or in your real life, that can also trigger emotions. So this is showing that interrelationship, that which comes first, the chicken or the egg. It can just depend on the moment. And again, as I said earlier, it's really about awareness. We're not here to say you just need to control yourself in the sense of beating yourself up all the time. This is an invitation to observe patterns that may emerge, because when we become more aware, then we're more able to make changes as desired. Just going to read in the chat quickly. I organize, I think, is that Shirley? Other ways I cope: organizing, making to-do lists, or going to Swig and buying a drink. Anything, my house, my inbox, a new program idea, as long as my mind is organizing, it helps me deal. So we see some patterns with how y'all like to manage stress or negative emotions. Here's another example of how inputs can impact our space, that processing box of our internal world. Some research shows that even 3 minutes of negative news in the morning can decrease positivity by 27% by the end of the day. So we can be very susceptible to the stimuli around us. All right, we're going to take a blink and breathe break for just a few seconds. This is not just to be able to take a break in the middle of this deluge of information, but also it's a teaching opportunity. I think we all have a sense that breathing can help our brains reset and calm down. Blinks can do the same thing. They are tiny brain rest moments. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about this, but when we use digital tools, we blink less. So even when we're doing something engaging and positive, like a Zoom, I'm engaged here and I'm excited about what we're sharing, but I'm not blinking the way I normally would. So just take a couple of breaths and a couple of long blinks. And this is good for your eyes. Of course, it's good for your blood oxygen level, and it's also good for your brain. So that right there is a mental wellness tool. And because I've gotten the sense that you are people who like to research, I'm just including research links on these slides so that you can refer to them later. Our fourth activity is I'm just going to show you the screen that has the mental health questions from the Digital Wellness Survey. So somebody asked for the link to this. There is the link to the survey. In fact, I don't know. No, it's not going to let me copy the link from the slideshow right now. But like I said, we'll be sending these slides out so you can access that directly.
If you leave it there long enough, I'll type it in.
For time's sake, I think we should probably just
Okay,
keep moving on.
that's fine.
But even before the call ends, I can go back. Once I stop screen share, I can go back and put it in the chat. Please just help me remember to do that. So before I show you these questions, I just want to invite you, if you have any other thoughts or questions that come to mind that you would want to add to the survey, create your own questions, because maybe not all of the questions asked here are going to be relevant to you. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to, I won't read the questions to you. I'm just going to let you read them to yourselves. Actually, are there people here who are just listening and aren't by their screen? Would it be helpful for me to read them? How did these usually work? Do you often have people listening?
I think it's helpful because sometimes on your phone you can't zoom in.
That too. Okay. I'll read them. Thank you for the feedback. I use my phone to distract myself from difficult situations. That kind of relates to what we just talked about. When I'm away from my phone or my technology, that could be your computer or whatever, I feel anxious about missing something. So sometimes called FOMO, fear of missing out. And I actually research FOMO. It's not just a kid thing. When I see attractive or successful people on social media or elsewhere on technology, I feel worse about myself. When I see people on social media accomplish great things, I feel inspired. These two questions are related to social comparison research. We'll be talking about that more in the relationships section. But when I see that, I feel inspired to follow in their footsteps. And the last question is, I scroll through social media more than I post, comment, or search for content. And that there is measuring active versus passive use. If we're actively, deliberately using technology, the chance for it to have a negative mental wellness impact goes down. When we're being passive about it, the chance for mental wellness impact in a negative way goes up. So there again is the link. And again, I'll share that at the end. We're going to take one more blink and breathe break. This is another, I've got tongue twisters in here today. Blink and breathe break. Oh, got a chat. Somebody says, is this Shirley? I don't miss my phone until I realize I don't have it. Then everything changes. That is an interesting observation. Okay, so we'll share a few. That's supposed to be number 5. I did a little tweak too. So there's another edit. These are just a few examples again. And we're going to particularly be focusing on this I use my phone to distract myself from difficult situations. And before we go into the tips and tricks and ideas for resetting into a state of mental wellness, as you think about your children or others you're concerned about, again, it can be really easy to go to tool management. If there are problematic digital behaviors, it's really easy to focus on the tool. Our invitation is to focus on the person, because often problematic digital use is connected to what's going on inside someone. And being able to be aware of that and open up conversations and help that child or that friend understand how to build emotional and mental resilience can have stronger impact than talking about behavior and focusing on trying to manage behavior, because behavior is very often just a symptom, just an indicator of what's going on in that internal world. If there's nothing else you remember today, that would be my hope for the takeaway, is whether we're trying, Near EL says that when adults try to manage their digital behavior, if they start with just pacts, okay, I promised myself I'm not going to do this. If they just start with trying to manage end behaviors, they will not be successful, generally speaking. That we need to start with our internal triggers and with that awareness and curiosity and self-compassion. Okay, so if you or someone you care about is inclined to turn to technology as a coping strategy, first of all, breath is always a powerful tool. And there are a lot of different breathing techniques that are out there. I've just chosen one that I've seen show up in many different settings, which is to inhale for 4. So I'm going to invite you to do this with me, to inhale for 4 and exhale for 6. So inhale for 4. Exhale for 6. Let's do it one more time. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 6. What they've found is that if the exhale is longer than the inhale, that is better for the nervous system to help put the parasympathetic nervous system more online. Smell the flowers, blow out the candles. That's a good one. There's so many. You find what works for you. I like that. So we can, when we're feeling that pull to either technology or to maybe some of our negative coping strategies, last week we talked about remembering your center. Go back there. Remember the word that you're focusing on. Remember what you wrote about and how you felt. As we engage our prefrontal cortex, our reactive emotions can have less of a pull. This is a Neri Yall idea. He calls it surfing the urge. This is not a new idea, but the way he frames, I really like the way he frames it. If we have a negative emotion or that pull to technology come and show up at a time when we know that's not what we really want to be doing, he says, just give it 10 minutes and surf that urge. Get curious about it. You can kind of just, I call it putting on your lab coat and glasses, looking at it from a distance with a spirit of curiosity. What's that about? You know, what's going on inside? What is my internal weather? What's going on inside of me? What's my internal weather like? And just give it a few minutes. And he says, often when people even just take 10 minutes, it can help that urge or that trigger or whatever kind of dissipate. He has many interviews out there about this idea. And he talks in this particular one that I've put a link to. He explores why, again, just saying no, just trying to increase your discipline doesn't work. And this is consistent with prevention science. They've found that the just say no drug campaigns, for example, really don't work and may actually cause harm. So revisiting prevention science and that side-by-side concept, I think you've already heard from a prevention science expert about social development strategy, that instead of trying to just say no, just discipline yourself more, self or child or husband or spouse, getting inside our world again and building relationships and bonding connections. Social development strategy says building skills side by side can help be a protective factor for negative, for problematic behaviors. This is a trick that is recommended by therapists for both children and adults. And here are just a couple of representations of it. I would turn the hand the other direction because, 5 to me is the pinky, but 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch or feel with your skin or the sense of touch, 3 things you can hear, 4 things, see, I'm doing it, my brain's going that way. All right, let me try again. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Or on this one on the right, writing 1 good thing about yourself. We've talked about the power of writing about our values, but reflecting on our positive traits, it can be empowering as well. Because it's really easy to start negative self-talk when you're feeling negative emotions or emotions that you perceive to be negative. Other things we can do, we can write about how we're feeling, or we can rewrite about our centering values, or call a friend to help us recenter. Okay, help me remember who am I? Who do you see? What do you see in me? Because again, that negative self-talk can creep in, and a good friend can help us recenter. My one warning with this is to be careful not to just vent and increase your emotional distress but to call with that intention to get support and for recentering and grounding. And of course, we all know this, that using our bodies is a great way. Like Megan said, I go for a walk. I go for a fast walk. I get into my body so that I'm out of my head. An author, Jackson McKenzie, says, less story. You know, we get these narratives or hamster wheels going in our head. Less story, more body. So dance or sing or walk or run or hug yourself. This is Yoga with Adrienne. She's one of my favorite yoga people. And oh, she has so much compassion. And right here, she's saying, and wrap your arms around yourself and hug yourself. I love that.
Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna do a plug for yoga. I practice yoga quite often. I'd like to take a yoga teacher training eventually when time allows. But yoga, it physically changes things in your brain. It's the breathing, everything about it is very calming. And when I first started practicing, when I would finish a 20 or 30-minute yoga session, I had this overwhelming feeling of, I got this. It was really surprising to me that that's how I felt just after, like I said, about 25 minutes.
Yoga is such, Jan, Jan does yoga as well. Anyone else want to put a plug in for yoga? Meditation is also one to put a plug in for.
And take
But
somebody
yeah,
with you to do yoga. That's pretty fun.
That's great too, because then you're combining the social connection element
Yeah.
with it. I've also discovered when I do yoga that if I'm doing some of the harder moves, that it helps me plug into what's going on in my mental emotional state too. It helps me kind of surpass the thinking brain and just get into my body and listen to it. It's really sometimes kind of magical, actually. Kickboxing, yes. Cosmic Kids Yoga. Oh, that's awesome to do that as a family. I love that. So we all have different things that work. I don't know if any of you have felt this, but if you're used to turning to tech or kind of a rut behavior, it may feel a bit like work to do different. When I'm feeling tired, at the end of the day, and there's that pull to veg on social media or whatever, if I choose not to do that, I can feel my brain saying, but. So it can be kind of a workout at times. But as Megan talked about last week, we can build new grooves. And that is so exciting. The concept, the science of brain plasticity is so exciting and is relatively new. A generation before us did not understand this. And there was sort of this belief that, once you reach a certain age, your brain is just kind of where it is. But we know now that our brains are plastic. And so we can constantly be learning and growing and improving. I think I started by saying that mental wellness is so much about reducing the load on our brains, reducing clutter, bringing in more brain breaks, more rest. And so I took this image of the barbell with the brain and flipped it upside down. And when I did, I realized there was a smile built in. So we can even just, I've been doing a meditation around a smile. Even simple things like taking a moment to just do a half smile and say, it's okay. Things are going to be okay. All right. So here are a few more. These are specifically ideas to help reduce the load on your brain. One of them is to practice social distancing from your phone or from your technology. This is a research that came out of UT that shows that, so the 3 bars represent, if you can't see, that's kind of fuzzy, when your phone is on your desk, that's the left column, when it's in your pocket or bag, so at least out of sight, and when it's in another room. And you can see that working memory capacity increases significantly when it's in another room. And fluid intelligence increases when the further away the phone is, when you're doing something that you want to be focusing on. This goes back to the magic trick, or back to some of those little brain activities that we did, that even just what they call it, the mere presence phenomenon, even just the mere presence of your phone can drain brain energy. And so I've been, since I learned about this, I'll throw my phone. I work in a room that has a bed. So I'll throw my phone on the bed, or I'll just leave it in the other room. And I invite you to practice this, and invite your kids, if you have kids who have phones, to experiment with it and see if you notice a difference. Just as I put definitions here, that working memory is about controlling and regulating cognitive processes across different domains. So being able to hold space in your brain for different tasks. And fluid intelligence is the ability to reason and solve novel problems and manage cognitive processes with a goal orientation. And there's more there. There's the link to the research. And in fact, I just quoted some of it there, so you can revisit that. We can use brain resilience, so not just to respond to stressful or triggery situations, but to actually front load. If we go back to that process again with the space, with the Viktor Frankl quote, we can front load and have some of the inputs that we're bringing in be stress resilience deposits. So these are just a few ideas from James Garrett. I'm actually taking a brain retraining class from him, and it's wonderful. There are many other things we could add to this list, but these are his favorites. 10 minutes of meditation, a 10-minute phone call with a friend, 10 minutes with nature, 20 minutes of exercise or movement, a 27-minute nap. So apparently it on average takes people about 7 minutes to fall asleep, and then a 20-minute nap so you don't get too deep into the sleep, just a power nap. Gratitude list, he does his, he ties it with a habit every day so that it's not something he has to even think about doing. He just builds it into his routine. He does it when after he brushes his teeth. And we've talked about decreasing news and the impact that can have. In the addiction recovery world, they use the serenity prayer. And if we think about the digital world, it's very easy to get mentally or even, literally involved with things in conversations and comments and debates over things we really don't have any control over. So I think the serenity prayer is a really powerful tool for digital wellness, because we can practice exercising that wisdom, that discernment, to be able to distinguish between the things we can control and the things we can't. I recently saw a post from a young man who participated in our DigSit Summit in 2017. He's now a young father, and he said, I took the challenge to get off of Facebook for 2 weeks to see what happened. And he said, I just realized that I've been expending so much energy worrying about things that are going on in the world, with news and everything. I just want to refocus more of my energy on the things that I can control. He used almost that exact language. So that's a wonderful tool as well. So as we are finishing up, I know our time is up. Does anybody have any other things that they'd like to share just really quickly about what works for you to help you recenter? You've already shared some great examples in the chat. So is the chat something that can we compile some of the responses, not necessarily tying them to any names, but would that be something we could do as we share this back out, Megan?
Yeah, when I get the recording downloaded, it'll send me a text of the chat box.
Could you send that to me, and I'll just kind of organize it. Again, it won't be tied to any individual name, but just to show that we've had a conversation, and to get other people, people who watch the recording, it might get their brain juices going. So as we finish up, here are your invitations for the coming week. Each week, we're going to give you some action opportunities, and then we'll check in at the beginning of next week. If you haven't taken the survey, there's the link again. It's a great way to get a baseline for where you are, and to not only have that opportunity for self-assessment, but also there are principles that are taught in the questions. It's great. review today's slides for just one mental wellness activity that you want to try this week, something new. When you're tempted to turn to either mindless tech use or to one of your coping mechanisms that maybe you want to improve on, and or review today's slides for one of the building basic brain awareness activities to do with someone else, be that a child, a spouse, a friend, a colleague. And I've listed some of them here: watching the magic shows and discussing that, doing the interrelationships worksheets, playing around with those multitasking challenges, and then have a little discussion. So that is so Catherine is asking, Megan, I'm going to just do these last couple of slides and I'll let you answer that question from Catherine about where they can find the slides. I always like to end with these quotes. We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. We need not wait to see what others do. And in the attention economy, mindfulness, or we could put in other words, intention, awareness, these things are a way that we can practice. This is truly peaceful activism to work from the inside out. So thank you so much for letting us be here again today. Well, we had a couple of other people join in. I'm sorry I didn't see you, Melissa and Judkins Computer. We're so glad you were able to join us.
Thanks again, Michelle. I'm excited. I learned a lot through this series, and it's more than just digital wellness. It's overall wellness, obviously. But,
indeed.
Yeah, we definitely need to share the idea of digital wellness and how it affects our physical and mental state. So yes, as far as the presentation slides, Michelle has been really good to email me those, and I will put them in the replay. I'll make myself a note. I think I did it last week. I put everything in there that you gave me, all the links and stuff. So I will upload files. Okay. Sorry, if I don't write it down, it doesn't happen in my world. All right. Any final questions for Michelle today? Awesome. Great.
I'm putting the
link in the chat.
I'm putting the link for the survey into the chat.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying not to get that bright light on my rear view here. We'll have parent conversations again next Tuesday. You guys have noticed this has been a change from our regular Mondays. It'll be Tuesday for the foreseeable future, at least through the middle of November. It's got to give a shout out to the health departments that have made this possible: Bear River Health Department, Central Utah Public Health Department, and the Davis County Health Department, because we couldn't do it without their support. Let's see, you couldn't find last week's replay. They go into the Facebook community groups. So, and if you can't find it in your local one, you can always check out Discover Family Fun USA. That one it usually goes there first. So,
and I'm also just putting my email if you do run into any snags. If you're not able to reach Megan or Shirley or the Facebook groups, you can always just email me and I can forward it to you as well.
Yep. And I'll just put my email in here really quick. It's Megan at My Discovery Destination. I gotta spell destination right though. Right. Just make sure you get okay. That too is supposed to be an and sign. At sign. Just make sure you spell my first name correctly or it'll go into cyberspace. So thank you, Michelle. We look forward to next week. And if there is nothing else, then we'll go ahead and end our session today. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.